She's worn a dress made of meat, arrived at an award show in an egg, and transformed from pop provocateur to Oscar-winning actress. But behind the elaborate costumes and boundary-pushing performances lies a story of profound transformation, one that began in the darkest corners of trauma and emerged into the brightest lights of success. This is the story of Stefani Joanne Angelina Germanotta, better known to the world as Lady Gaga. Our story begins in March 1986 in the affluent Upper West Side of Manhattan. Stefani Germanotta was born into a world of privilege. Her father, an internet entrepreneur, her mother, a philanthropist. From the outside, it looked like the perfect American dream. But beneath the surface, darkness was already taking root. Music became Stefani's first language. By age 4, she was playing piano. By 13, she had written her first song. But these weren't just melodies. They were lifelines, ways to express feelings she couldn't yet understand or articulate. At the prestigious convent of the Sacred Heart, Stefani excelled academically. But socially, she felt like an outsider. She was different, too intense, too artistic, too much. The other students called her names, excluded her from social groups, and made her feel fundamentally unwanted. I was made fun of in high school. I was called a freak. I was called a weirdo. I was excluded from parties, she once said in an interview. But the cruelest wound was yet to come. At 19, while attending NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, Stefani experienced a trauma that would haunt her for years. She was sexually assaulted by a music producer, a violation that she would keep secret for over a decade. The assault shattered something fundamental inside her. She dropped out of NYU after just 1 year, diving headfirst into New York's underground music scene. But she wasn't running toward her dreams. She was running from her nightmares. In dingy clubs and dive bars, Stefani performed with a desperate intensity. She was searching for something: validation, escape, or perhaps just a reason to keep going. The music was raw, the performances were electric, but behind the stage lights, she was drowning. Her early music with the Stefani Germanotta Band was deeply personal. Songs about heartbreak, alienation, and the search for identity. But the music industry is cruel to vulnerability. Record labels wanted something more commercial, more palatable. They wanted her to be someone else. In 2008, everything changed. Working with producer Red One, Stefani began to construct a new identity, one that would protect her vulnerability while allowing her to express her truth. Lady Gaga wasn't just a stage name. She was armor. The name Gaga came from Queen's song, Radio Gaga, a reference that captured her love for theatrical rock and her desire to create something that would make people lose themselves in the music. But this transformation was more than artistic. It was psychological survival. She said in an interview, "I don't want to make money. I want to make a cultural impact. I want to make music that changes people's lives." The fame wasn't just an album title. It was a manifesto. Stefani had been rejected, abused, and marginalized. But as Lady Gaga, she would create a world where outcasts could be superstars, where weirdness was wonderful, and where being different was a superpower. The outrageous costumes weren't just fashion statements, they were statements of defiance. Each outfit said, "I will not be invisible. I will not be normal. I will not be what you expect." The girl who had been called a freak in high school was now celebrating freakiness on a global stage. But beneath the spectacle, Gaga was processing her trauma through art. Bad Romance wasn't just a catchy pop song. It was about toxic relationships, about wanting something that hurts you, about the complex psychology of survival after assault. As Gaga's fame exploded, something beautiful happened. Her message of self-acceptance began to reach people who needed it most. Gay kids in conservative towns, bullied teenagers, anyone who had ever felt different. They all found refuge in Gaga's music. She called them her little monsters, and they became her army. But success brought new challenges. The constant scrutiny, the pressure to be increasingly outrageous, the weight of carrying her fans' hopes. It was taking its toll. The armor that protected her was also isolating her. By 2013, the cracks were showing. Artipop was ambitious but unfocused, reflecting Gaga's internal struggle between commercial expectations and artistic integrity. The album underperformed, and critics began to question whether her moment had passed. The physical demands of constant touring, combined with the emotional weight of her unprocessed trauma, were breaking her down. She was developing chronic pain, struggling with substance abuse, and fighting a battle that no one could see. In 2013, Gaga was forced to cancel tour dates due to what she initially described as a hip injury. But the truth was more complex. She was suffering from fibromyalgia, a chronic pain condition often linked to trauma and stress. Her body was finally demanding that she face what she had been running from. "I was in pain every day. I didn't know why. I was angry. I was sad. I was hurt," she said. For the first time in years, Gaga was forced to be still. In that stillness, she began to confront the trauma she had buried beneath layers of fame and artifice. The girl who had been assaulted at 19 was still there, still hurting, still needing to heal. The healing process was brutal. Gaga began therapy, started processing her sexual assault, and began to understand how her trauma had shaped everything, from her need for validation to her fear of vulnerability. But understanding was just the beginning. In 2014, Gaga made an unexpected move. She collaborated with jazz legend Tony Bennett on Cheek to Cheek, stripping away the costumes and spectacle to reveal something more fundamental, her voice. It was a radical act of vulnerability. Working with Bennett, who was old enough to be her grandfather, Gaga found something she had lost: simplicity. The jazz standards required no costumes, no choreography, just pure vocal talent and emotional honesty. It was terrifying and liberating. "She's a natural jazz singer. She's got the goods." Bennett praised Gaga's talent. Then came Till It Happens to You, a song for the documentary The Hunting Ground, about campus sexual assault. For the first time, Gaga directly confronted her own trauma through her art. The song was devastating, beautiful, and deeply personal. Her performance at the 2016 Academy Awards was a watershed moment. Surrounded by sexual assault survivors, Gaga sang with a raw honesty that reached into the hearts of millions. The standing ovation wasn't just for her performance, it was for her courage. But the most important moment happened after the performance. Gaga publicly disclosed her own sexual assault, breaking years of silence. "I was raped when I was 19 years old. I never told anyone. I was too afraid." It was an act of tremendous bravery that would inspire countless others to share their own stories. In 2016, Gaga released Joanne, named after her aunt who died young. The album was a complete departure. No elaborate costumes, no dance beats, just songs about family, loss, and finding yourself. It was Gaga at her most human. The cowboy hats and denim weren't costumes. They were connections to her Italian-American roots, to a simpler version of herself that existed before the fame, before the trauma, before the need to be anyone other than who she was. Then came the opportunity that would change everything. Bradley Cooper offered her the lead role in A Star Is Born, a chance to prove herself as an actress. But more than that, it was a chance to be completely vulnerable in front of the camera. As Ally, Gaga drew on every painful experience. The rejection, the assault, the struggle to find her voice. She wasn't just playing a character. She was excavating her own journey from trauma to triumph. Shallow became more than a song. It became an anthem for anyone who had ever felt like they were drowning and needed to find the surface. Gaga's performance was so raw, so honest, that it was impossible to tell where Ally ended and Stefani began. The night she won the Oscar for Best Original Song, Gaga stood on stage holding the golden statue, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't just recognition of her talent, it was validation of her journey, proof that transformation was possible. If you have a dream, fight for it. There's a discipline for passion, Gaga said in her Oscar acceptance speech. Success could have been the end of the story, but for Gaga, it was just the beginning. Through her Born This Way Foundation, she began working to support youth mental health and combat bullying. The girl who had been bullied was now protecting others from the same pain. Chromatica, in 2020, marked another transformation. Gaga returned to dance music, but this time it was different. The pain was still there, but it was transformed into something healing. Songs like Rain on Me weren't about avoiding sadness. They were about dancing through it. She began speaking openly about her mental health struggles, her therapy, her medication. I have PTSD, I have anxiety, I have depression, but I'm not ashamed of it, and I want other people to know they're not alone. The woman who had once hidden behind elaborate costumes was now completely transparent about her healing journey. Her final album with Tony Bennett, Love for Sale, was particularly poignant. Bennett was battling Alzheimer's, and Gaga's care for him during their performances showed how far she had come. The woman who had once been too wounded to trust was now capable of profound compassion. Her role in House of Gucci proved that her acting wasn't a one-time achievement. She could disappear into completely different characters, drawing on her vast emotional range to bring complex women to life. Today, Lady Gaga represents something unprecedented in pop culture: complete integration. She can be Stefani the jazz singer, Gaga the pop star, or Lady Gaga, the actress. She no longer needs to choose between authenticity and performance. She's found a way to be both. Her relationship with her fans has also evolved. They're no longer just little monsters seeking refuge. They're a community of people supporting each other through their own healing journeys. Gaga didn't just find her voice, she helped others find theirs. The transformation is visible in how she carries herself. Gone is the desperate energy of early Gaga, replaced by a quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are. She's still theatrical, still dramatic, but now it comes from a place of choice rather than necessity. In a recent interview about growth, she said, "I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago. I'm not even the same person I was 5 years ago, and I'm proud of that growth." Now, in her late 30s, Gaga has become something she never expected: a mentor. She works with young artists, sharing not just her technical knowledge, but her hard-won wisdom about survival, authenticity, and the courage to be vulnerable. On sets and in studios, she's known for her kindness, her professionalism, and her ability to create safe spaces for creativity. The woman who once needed protection now protects others. Her philanthropy has expanded beyond her foundation. She supports disaster relief, LGBTQ+ rights, and mental health initiatives. Her wealth and fame have become tools for healing, not just her own, but the world's. When she speaks now, there's a weight to her words that comes from experience. She's not just sharing opinions, she's sharing lessons learned from walking through fire and emerging transformed. But perhaps the most beautiful aspect of Gaga's transformation is her understanding that it's never complete. She continues to evolve, to grow, to surprise herself and others. The journey from trauma to triumph isn't a destination. It's a way of traveling. She's currently working on new music, new films, new ways to connect with audiences. But now, instead of running from her past, she's building on it. Every new project is informed by her journey, making it richer and more meaningful. In her personal life, she's learned to build healthy relationships, to trust, to love without losing herself. The woman who once felt fundamentally unlovable has discovered that healing makes love possible. She once shared on love and relationships. I had to learn to love myself before I could love anyone else. That was the hardest lesson, but the most important one. Lady Gaga's transformation from trauma to triumph has created ripple effects that extend far beyond her own life. She's shown that it's possible to alchemize pain into art, to transform wounds into wisdom, to use fame as a force for healing. Her openness about mental health has contributed to a broader cultural shift. Young people are more likely to seek help, more willing to discuss their struggles, more hopeful about recovery. She's helped normalize conversations that were once shrouded in shame. Her influence on other artists is undeniable. A new generation of performers feels permission to be vulnerable, to be authentic, to use their platforms for more than just entertainment. She's shown that commercial success and artistic integrity aren't mutually exclusive. Looking back at her journey, it's clear that every stage was necessary. The trauma that nearly destroyed her also gave her the depth to create meaningful art. The fame that isolated her also gave her the platform to help others. The breaking point that shattered her also allowed her to rebuild stronger. Today, when Lady Gaga takes the stage, she carries with her every version of herself she's ever been. The wounded teenager, the desperate young artist, the global superstar, the Oscar winner, the mental health advocate, they're all there, integrated into a single, powerful presence. Her fans sing along not just to catchy melodies, but to anthems of survival. They see in her not just a celebrity, but a fellow traveler on the journey from darkness to light. She's proof that transformation is possible, that trauma doesn't have to define us, that our deepest wounds can become our greatest strengths. In her eyes, you can see the girl who was bullied, assaulted, and broken. But you can also see the woman who refused to let those experiences have the final word. She chose to transform her pain into purpose, her trauma into triumph, her suffering into service. Lady Gaga's story isn't just about one woman's journey from trauma to triumph. It's about the human capacity for transformation, the power of art to heal, and the courage to be vulnerable in a world that often punishes authenticity. She reminds us that we are not defined by what happens to us, but by how we choose to respond. The girl who once felt like a freak, who was told she was too much, who carried unspeakable pain, she became exactly who she was meant to be, not despite her struggles, but because of how she chose to transform them. And in doing so, she gave the rest of us permission to do the same. This is Lady Gaga, not just a pop star, but a symbol of the possible, a reminder that no matter how dark the night, dawn always comes. A testament to the truth that our greatest traumas can become our greatest triumphs, if we're brave enough to do the work of transformation. The journey continues. Thank you for joining us today. If this story inspired you, remember to like and share it with someone who needs to hear that their darkness doesn't define them. Their light does. Don't forget to subscribe for our upcoming stories of triumph over adversity.